when it comes to PTSD, that's really when I started to become aware of those symptoms in me, because now that I knew, hey, they're going to med board me, which means, I'm not going to be a Marine soon. And I'm taking all these meds and I just, the hallucinations and the hypervigilance and all that stuff started to happen. And, in a lot of ways, I took this mindset of just like, I'm just waiting to die. That's what I'm doing. I'm waiting to die.
Was there like the societal stigma as well of like, you're a man, you can't show emotions or you can't cry, and then added on to the Marine of like, suck it up? Do you think a lot of that was playing into you as to why,
A little
like,
bit. I think it was more the Marine thing and being tough.
okay,
I mean,
not really more of a societal norm?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because honestly, what people don't realize, those vets could give a crap what society thinks about them.
Yeah.
Like, by the time you're in, it's such an us versus them. I don't care what you think about me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. You know what I mean? That's kind of where you're at. But internally, like that standard that you're supposed to be, like, here's what a Marine's supposed to be. Here's what a SEAL's supposed to be. Here's what a Ranger's supposed to be. That's mojo. Like, that's powerful. You know what I mean? Like, that's burned into.
Is that why they didn't show so much, like, I don't want to say care, I guess maybe interest is the word that I'm looking for, so much interest into your emotional state after the fact? Or
no, I think with the military, the prime reason they don't, it's cold, it's calculated, it's very cynical sounding, but it's true. All they care about is readiness. When you're in the military, if you think about it, the high level officers move every 3 years. Lower level, you might stay at the same base, come up in your unit, for career. But the higher level people that are determined on all this move a lot. And once you get to that point, I mean, once you get like above, someone who stays in for 20, like as an officer, you could retire as a major if you weren't that motivated, but you were good enough to stick around. But once you get to like lieutenant colonel and colonel, and especially you get to lieutenant colonel and colonel, and you want to be a general, okay, in any of the branches, in the Navy, you'd be an admiral. Your career is based on criteria that the mental health and wellness of your soldiers or sailors or Marines or airmen don't matter. It's readiness. Are you ready to deploy? And see, the problem with mental health, you're in this gray area. You can't deploy if it's bad enough, but you're on my books.
So it's not so much as that they don't care about you and your mental state. They're just sort of like an employer, like trying to run a business. They're like, we need the able-bodied guys.
Yes. And we don't need you on our books if you're not.
Gotcha.
Just like, think of a business, if you were a construction business and 10% of your payroll was on workman's comp and not working. And it stays that way. And then the other guys, 1% is. Well, who do the shareholders want? They want the person with 1%.
1%, yeah.
It's the same thing. What does the military want? They want combat-ready units. If you are in the hospital because you're getting treated for PTSD, you're not combat-ready. And again, it can make you cynical. Maybe I'm cynical. Maybe I'm just realistic. They say the right things, but the motivations are completely different. And ultimately, you're going to follow your motivations. And the motivation in the military isn't, how do we get these men and women at the end of their careers healthy? The motivation is, how are we ready to complete the mission? And I get it. I mean,
how do we win the war?
Not to go off on a tangent, but that's why I think personally the military does too much and it's too big. It shouldn't be go join the military for a career. It should be join the military to go protect our country and kill people. And you know what you're getting yourself in for.
Yeah.
And I think you'd have better mental health outcomes because you'd be forced to deal with them. But now it's like a business. It really is. It's like a business. And then I think you make decisions over dollars and cents and numbers on a paper, not a human being. And that was me. Someone made the determination. It wasn't worth what it would take to try to completely get this guy fit for duty, because if we spend the money and he isn't fit for duty, we've wasted that money.
Spend the money on.
We're better off to let the VA. We don't want our money to fix them. We want the VA's money to fix them, if they can even fix them. It's that simple. I mean, it's like an equation, and that's kind of when I went crazy, and then that's really, I think, where my story of what I do today started, because all of a sudden, even though I'm a young man at the time, I'm still looking at life in the world like, okay, what am I going to go do now? I felt like, my life was over.
Were you a spiritual person before then, like at all?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I mean, my dad was a pastor. My brother's a pastor.
Okay.
I grew up in the church. I never didn't believe in God. I just had moments I was mad at God. I was, I find a lot of times.
So you knew God here. You probably just didn't really know him here.
Yeah, I kind of knew him in the heart too.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew him. You can know God and be mad at him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, you know, I looked at the world and I'm like, yeah, you're there, but I don't care. You're not any better. The devil, God, yeah, you won. I mean, it was almost like that. Like, it's just like, you do some really bad things. Like,
just content, complacent.
Yeah. And just mad. Like, I don't like the world you created, and what I find is, not obviously not all, but a lot of times people that say they don't believe in God really just don't like God. That what they will tell you
Right.
is, if God is this way, I don't believe in him. Well, not liking somebody is not a reason to think they don't exist.
Right.
It's just, I don't like you.
Yeah.
And so I think I had enough self-awareness of what I was mad about. It's like, again, I didn't not believe in God. I'm saying, I don't like you. I don't like, I don't like this world you've created. I don't like your bargain, whatever. And so anyway, so I wasn't, and so, which kind of, again, that's a good question, because it kind of leads to what's next. So, basically, my kind of moment of truth is I was in bad state, and I'm getting near the time when my med board's going to go through, and I'll be discharged. And I'm in this coffee shop outside. But by this point, I'd been at Wilford Hall for about a year and a half, 2 years, maybe a year and a half. I'm staying in officers' quarters. I'm going to outpatient therapy for things. I couldn't sleep. Had bad insomnia. And I'm in this coffee shop at like 2 a.m. And, it's when you could still smoke in a coffee shop in Texas. And I wish you could sometimes. And so I'm in this.
That's Texas for you.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So I'm in this coffee shop in Texas, smoking. And I had, and one of my triggers for PTSD for years was the weather, because in Oceana, when the crash happened, it was hot, it was humid. It was like a summer storm,
Mm-hmm.
And so if you get the right heat, right humidity, I would just start feeling anxious and nervous for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm in there and I started feeling that, and it was like this storm was breaking out in the coffee shop. And I didn't know if it was my PTSD or the drugs I was on, or I hadn't slept in a week. But
anyway, it's in the cigarette, right?
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, the psychiatrist I was seeing, who ended up helping me a bunch by just talking to me as a human being, one of the things we had talked about is, when I was a really young boy, I was very creative.
Mm-hmm.
And really just that pursuit of culturally, this is where I think the culture would come in, just, being an athlete and being tough. I just didn't follow that creative thing as much. And we had talked about it. And at one point, I had said to her, pretty soon I'm not going to can't do this anymore. What am I going to do next? And she kind of challenged me and was like, what would that little boy do? And I didn't know what he would do, but he was kind of always in the back of my head.
Were you scared at all?
Nah, not really. I was mad. I wasn't scared. I was just mad. I think I was mad and angry and depressed, and I felt shame. I felt guilt. Yeah, I wouldn't say I was scared.
Was your guilt like, I guess, like what they attribute to survivor's guilt?
Yeah, I had some. I definitely had survivor's guilt. Yeah, I had a bunch of guilt. So I'm sitting there in this coffee shop, and it was like the storm broke out, and then I thought back to her, and I'm like, well, normally I would go home and, put a gun to my head, or I would go out, drinking or something. But man, what'd that little boy do? And I said, that little boy would probably write something. And so I asked this waitress for something to write with. I think she gave me a pencil, and I grabbed the napkin and see if I can remember it. It just literally came out of me, like, took a storm to crack a mortar, the stone, the aged clay, to build the walls. Took a storm to crack the mortar, the stone, the aged clay. The walls I built. I'm trying to remember this poem. I can't remember it now. We'll have to do this later. This is my book. But anyway, I wrote this poem about going through this and coming out of it with nothing. Okay. And the end of this poem is that basically, now that my life has been washed away, the very last line is, and now I'll swim. And basically it was realizing, man, if I'm sitting here in a dark room with a gun to my head, what do I got to lose to live? I got nothing. It also made me realize, you know, I might have survivor's guilt, but how am I honoring him in the way I'm living? I'm not. You honor somebody by how you live your life. And so I'm like, I gotta start living again. And, you know, one thing I'd always wanted to do was like play the guitar. So I bought a guitar, started playing it. Another thing I'd always wanted to do, I always wanted a motorcycle, never had one, sold my car, bought motorcycle. And so then the day, you know, my med board went through and I left the Marine Corps. You know, I wasn't all better. You know, I still didn't really know where I was going. I was still kind of angry and pissed. I still had bad days, but I felt like I was moving forward. I felt like I was on my own, learning to unpack, you know, what I had been.
Would you say it's kind of like that quote, whenever you have nothing to lose, you have everything to gain?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I tell people that. I tell people versions of that all the time. 100%.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I wasn't all right, you know, so I basically,
you weren't good, but you were better.
Yeah. And then, you know, when I, you know, go, you know, it's my last day in the Marine Corps and I pick up all my paperwork and my DD-214 and all that stuff. I take off on this motorcycle. And, you know, when I tell the story now, it talks, you know, I'll have a photo and it's me on this motorcycle. And, you know, I wasn't all better. You know, the way I looked at it, looking back, it's like I had a devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other. And the devil was saying, you know, ride to the middle of nowhere. And when you get there, you're alone, you know, take that handgun out of your tank bag and end it, and great way to go. And then there was an angel that was telling me, just keep riding. You got a reason to live. And I ended up being gone. I basically rode on and off for about 2 years, like all over the place. You know, I'd maybe stay with family and friends for a period of time. And, you know, probably the longest I was one place is maybe, you know, 3 weeks, a month. You know, maybe I'd be at home recharging, but then I'd immediately take off.
What'd you do for money during that time?
I had no debt and I had money saved up. Didn't need it. I mean, when you got no debt and you got no expenses, you don't need much.
Yeah.
I mean, and that was, you know, that was when you go to Taco Bell and feast for $2.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I stayed with friends. I mean, most of it was, you know, I wasn't like getting a hotel. So most of it was like, I knew people all over and family all over. So a lot of it was just going to places, or I camped, I had a tent, you know, I go to national parks, I go to parks, I camp, you know, I lived real. I mean, I bet you in that time, I maybe spent $1,000 a month, maybe.
Okay.
You know, and most of it, and almost all of it was just food and gas.
And this probably would have been like late 90s. Or, you were rolling in good dough then.
Yeah, I mean, a motorcycle gets, I think my KLR got like 60 miles to the gallon, maybe more.
Oh,
and when gas is $1.50.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I mean, think about it. And then on a motorcycle, you're going, you know, I'd maybe go at most 150, 200 miles a day.
Oh, okay.
And that's about all you would go. So, I mean, what's that? $3? $4?
Roughly, yeah.
I mean, it's not a lot. So I just did that. And then basically kind of where God came into it is I was somewhere in Texas and I'm in the middle of nowhere. And at the time I was completely ignorant. And there was this like Russian Orthodox church thing. And I'm like, I never seen one before. I'm like, what's that doing in Texas? And so I stopped, and it was this Russian Orthodox church, and I'd never even been one or seen one. And they just had a service, and everybody had left. And so I walked in there, and they just had a service, and it was like nothing I'd ever seen. Like there's all these icons and pictures, and it's painted, and there's incense you could still smell in the air. And it was just, you were overwhelmed by the sensory nature of it. And I think there's like a janitor there closing up, and he told me I could sit there, you know, while he was doing whatever he was doing. And so I just sat there and I just like looked around, and, you know, in an Orthodox church, you know, the icons are basically, you know, for most of the history of Christianity, a Christian didn't have a Bible. So one of the ways, you know, for, you know, 1,000 years, 1,500 years to people started having more Bibles, it was like pictures, there'd be pictures of things. And so you're looking around this church at all these pictures and you're recognizing all these Bible stories. And it's just weird how they were done, made you think about them. And then you're smelling the incense and I'm alone. And it was really probably the first time that I wasn't like angry at God. I'm like, this is what it means. It's an experience. It's like, there's another world out there. Like first time I'd ever, kind of gotten it. Cause churches today, especially tend to be the opposite of that. I get it. Why, but they tend to be like, here in Kokomo, it's a old, store that there's nothing beautiful about it at all. And they come up with some cool name to sound relevant.
Yeah. There was a church I went to for a while over in, I want to say Lebanon or Whitestown, one of those two. But that church was actually out of an old car shop.
Yeah, but you know what I mean?
Like the garages were like,
and I don't want to diminish what they do, but there's no beauty about it.
No. Yeah.
And so this was the opposite of that. And I'm just like, whoa, what is this? And so I didn't know what it was, and which tends to be the case, because, that was the Eastern Church split in 1050. And, most people think it's Catholic and it's not. And so they just don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
And so that got me looking into it. And so then I'm looking for these books to learn more about it. And I'm on this journey. And there's this, really famous, book. It's called the Pilgrim's Journey. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And basically it's about this Russian peasant who's just on the road, walking the earth, wanting to make sense of life. And he's like, what does prayer mean? What does that mean? What does it mean to pray? And I read this and again, it was kind of coming from a reference I'd never really thought of before. And it kind of resonated with me. And so then that kind of began this journey of learning about the Orthodox Church and where it came from and all this and that. And then finally I'm like, yeah, I think I'm going to do that. That's what I'm going to do. And then also because the Orthodox Church is very like, I think of them as tools. Like they're very like, okay, you want to control your passions. Here's how you do it. Okay. You want to love God. Here's how you do it. Like, and as a Marine, that's what I like. I'm a very much just tell me what to do and I'll do it.